Engaging the entire organization with GIS, a key to ArcGIS success. That's what we're going to cover today, and I really appreciate the few minutes here to spend with you at the Northeast Arc Users Group Spring 2021 meeting. And our focus today is how do you get the most out of your geospatial strategy? And thinking about it in broad terms of bringing everybody in the organization along, really driving that key to success. So my name's Chris Vicati. I'll be your facilitator here over the next 30 minutes or so, and I'm an organizational change consultant with Esri. I come to you with over 20 years experience in the cable television industry, very technical. Spent the first half of my career really looking at how building businesses, right? Marketing, sales, operations in a very technical environment. The second half of my career, I moved over to the HR side to really bring the people engagement along with the fast-paced technology in terms of making sure we are reaching our adoption and utilization of our initiatives. So one thing I love to live by, looking at change management and how we help our organizations that we support, it's really about enabling organizational change that accelerates ArcGIS adoption, broadens utilization, and it advances proficiency. So engaging the entire organization with GIS, all right? We've all been there. And I think that picture speaks 1,000 words. We go through everything that we feel is right. We plan an initiative, we bring all the technical components along, we're excited, we launch it, and then 30 days later, sometimes you can't even tell anything was done, right? Or we didn't have the results that we thought we would. We didn't get that utility. And that gets to be frustrating, right? Because a lot of time, money, resources get invested in these projects. Want to make sure you've got those outcomes that you're targeting. So today I'll share with you a few ideas how to engage the entire organization with GIS for accelerated adoption and utilization. One of the questions I like to ask often is, if you're going to go to the time, effort, and expense to upgrade or modernize your geospatial strategy, don't you want to have those outcomes that you've targeted early? Don't you want that to continue with muscle memory? We're going to look at some ways to do that through a people-focused strategy here today. So transformation ultimately is about driving adoption, really in anything you do. But in terms of your geospatial strategy, there couldn't be anything more true. And I love this graphic here. You know, the same old thinking gives you the same old results. You have to be able to look at not only what have we done, what worked and what didn't, how do we make it better? Because technology continues to develop, grow, and advance. So how do we make sure we keep pace and bring the people along with that as well? So fundamentally, ArcGIS adoption and organizational transformation isn't about transforming the organization, right? Many people think when you go through a change initiative, it's about transforming the organization as a whole. It's really about engaging the people that work in it. And often that happens one individual at a time. When you change hearts and minds and you bring people along with your strategy individually, collectively, that moves the organization to the point that you need it to be. So it's about driving adoption. So if you think about adoption, you do that through the organization-wide engagement. And GIS strategy and implementation. Okay, so let's look at that in granular terms. Things to consider that you need to answer as leaders, and I'm certainly that the teams and employees are going to be looking at, you know, why are we modernizing? Why are we doing this? Why now? What's this mean to us, right? Is there a purpose behind what we're doing? What is the relationship with GIS, IT, and other departments? Is this being done in a vacuum, or are there threads that reach throughout the organization to really elevate overall what you're doing? Are there impacts it can have on the total strategy of the organization? Another question asks, do you have effective sponsorship? Do you have that key senior leader or leaders that can be the face and the voice of what you're doing to lend that support? I liken this back to the old commercial when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, right? Having that sponsor that will help build relationships and liaisons for you and drive this as you go forward. And you have to ask, have we created awareness and desire throughout the organization, right? Do people understand fundamentally what we're doing? Do they understand what it means to them? And is there a desire to jump on and go? And then finally, think about, are we solving department or organizational business objectives, right? Not that one or the other is right or wrong, but if you're looking at just department versus what the organization's going to try to do overall and what they want to accomplish, then you might be aiming too slow. So think about how it can impact the organization as well. So engagement is really about focusing on people. We talked about organizational transformation happening one individual at a time. At the end of the day, organizations thrive when they focus on people. And people thrive when they have a strategy and a plan, when they can connect the dots to what you're doing and what it means to them. And I'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. Then you have a truly engaged workforce that's going to maximize what you're doing from your geospatial strategy. So think about this, right? You've probably been through many change initiatives, maybe some on your geospatial strategy, and talked about that picture we showed earlier with the gentleman in his face and his laptop. So you have a clear vision, yet the GIS strategy falls short, right? So let's talk about some of the barriers to an employee engagement and why some of those initiatives may fall short. So it really stems from three questions that you have to ask, and those answers will guide you in your path of, all right, now maybe we see why this fell short. So one, why when opportunities face employees do they fail to see the need for adoption? And I'll answer all these on the next slide. Right, when they fail to see the need for adoption, right? I see what you're doing. I just don't see why I need to be a part of it. So people see opportunities. Why do they not do anything about it? Second, then, even when employees now see the need, right? Why do they oftentimes still fail to move forward? I get it. I'm just not going to do it. Okay, there's some questions there. And then finally, when employees do move, they finally say, okay, I'm going to have to do it. Many times they fail to go far enough and have that be muscle memory and do it over time. They go back to the old ways of doing things. So that's three critical questions that you need to understand fundamentally when you're doing your geospatial strategy or frankly, any change initiative in your organization. So let's look at some of the reasons that engagement efforts can fail. Right? We talked about this earlier, a lack of engaged sponsorship support. Do you have that right person at the executive level that can be the tenor that can set the tone for what you're doing to drive that business message throughout the organization to say why this is important and then help communicate and keep that going forward. So that's number one, lack of engaged sponsorship support. Two, employees' failure to see the new direction based on entrenched mental maps. Right? So they're thinking, hey, I've always done it this way. It's always worked for me. I don't know why we need to change. It worked for me. It must be right. Therefore, they are comfortable doing what they've always done. They don't see the need for change. And then failure to move because people are not motivated to go from doing the wrong thing, which was the previous way of doing it, which they were really good at, to doing the new thing now that is now the right thing, right? The modernization, but they're afraid they may not be able to do it very well. Right? That's part of human nature. I'm really comfortable doing it this way, even though I know that's not the way to do it anymore. I'm going to keep doing that because I feel good about it. Scared I might not be able to do the new behavior, the new technology going forward. And then the failure to finish because at the end of the day, they get tired. And if there's not reinforcement about why this is important or ongoing coaching, then people will just go back to their old habits and old ways of doing things. And then a lack of interpersonal communication and coaching skills from leaders, just telling people what to do versus really helping coach them through the process. And then leadership, right? This is where sponsorship really comes in all the way down to those frontline leaders. Leadership fails to create and sustain an agile and resilient culture, one that not only embraces change, but seeks it out. Or maybe when things don't go according to plan, right, you're able to modify what you're doing. You're able to embrace it and not have that failure to see the direction or failure to act or failure to continue. So as we go through the next 20 minutes or so, three questions for driving GIS engagement I want you to consider. One, if every member of your organization would fully embrace and unleash the power of your geospatial strategy, what would the outcome look like for your business, right, or your organization? Second question, what teams and employees beyond your GIS team could provide a positive impact to your strategy and success? right? Think outside those that may not necessarily utilize the technology, but could utilize the output in terms of decision making. And what makes an organization truly exceptional and able to confront new exponential change in market and business conditions? Right? Think about those as we go through today. So the human factors at the end of the day determine success. You can do everything else well, but it comes down to people. And so 3 things to consider is the speed of adoption. When building your GIS strategy, right, modernization efforts, how quickly are people effectively executing the change elements, the new behaviors or processes? I call this getting in the boat moment with you, right? They understand what you're doing, they have the desire to do it, and they're there to support what you're doing. So it's speed of adoption. 2, it's about ultimate utilization. How many employees then in the total population are really demonstrating buy-in and actively utilizing the change elements that you need to do, right? So adoption, then utilization. And then 3, proficiency. This is again over time. How well are individuals performing compared to the level expected in the design of the change? So employee engagement increases GIS adoption. You want to look at that adoption, utilization, proficiency. Let me give you some staggering statistics here, some simple ways to really elevate your strategy and your outcomes. According to Beyond Performance 2.0, allowing staff to contribute in planning organizational initiatives they'll be involved in, that results in organizations being 3.4 times more likely to be successful. Right? If you look at McKinsey in their quarterly transformation survey from 2014, programs or initiatives are almost 6 times more likely to be successful when everyone in the organization understands how their work relates to the overall vision. And then 3, again, from that same McKinsey report, successful organizations were 4 times more likely to have brought in people to help plan their change versus unsuccessful organizations, right? So looking at bringing in the experts and bringing outside thought process and experience in terms of it. So some tactics here to really help drive your geospatial strategy. So here's a model to share with you. And if you look at technology and people integration, right, again, we're thinking about it in terms of adoption, utilization, and proficiency. You've got the technical side. So you're thinking about what's your current state and future state. It might be going from ArcMap to ArcPro. It might be where you are now to launching Portal. It might be, having multiple databases going into one cloud-centered enterprise database. Current state, future state. So you bring the technical side along, the processes, the technical specs. You're designing and developing and delivering everything. So at that go live moment, right, you've got your great new technology, your great new strategy. What you're hoping is you have the results and outcomes and successes. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. What you want to do is bring the people side along with the technical side. So at that first current state, it's about bringing people, right? It's about the communicating, the collaborating, the awareness, the desire, helping people understand where you are and creating that desire to support it. So as you're designing, developing, and delivering, moving towards implementation, your people are embracing, adopting, and then utilizing the strategy. So at the go live date, you do have the realization of the results, outcomes, and successes that you were targeting. So successful technology change is about integrating project management and change management. So if you look at a normal project, right, a normal modernization effort or strategy, you've got the business need. What are we solving for? And then you have that concept and design about, okay, this is what the technical aspect's going to look like. You implement it, then get that post-implementation, right, where you continue on throughout the process. If you look at then the change process that goes with it, in that business needs and that first start of the concept and the design, you really need to focus on getting your organization ready for change, identifying your sponsors, right, those type of things. Managing change happens in the concept design area through implementation. So now you're managing the components, you're bringing the people along with it. And then reinforcing change happens at implementation and then at post-implementation. And really, this is important because many organizations do a great job up through implementation. Then you go on to the next thing. And what we've learned is as human beings, if there's not that reinforcement over time, then people have a tendency to fall back into old behaviors or they simply quit using what they've learned. So sponsorship and communication really helps in that reinforcing change. So phase one, it's really about what's your change management strategy, who's the team, and then developing that sponsorship model to carry the message. Managing change then is about the change management plans. How are you training the workforce? How are you communicating? What are you doing to overcome resistance? Those type of things. And then it's taking action on those plans. And then reinforcing change is really about collecting and analyzing feedback. How did we do? What obstacles do we still have? How do we address it? Right? What gaps might we still have? How do we address it? And then it's implementing corrective actions. So I really like in all three of these stages, but in particular in reinforcing change, is asking your employees, how do we do? What challenges are you having? What ideas do you have to make it better? If you start that in preparing for change, can I have your feedback on what we could do to make this even better? Do I have your support? During managing change, you're asking them, what do you still need to know about this project? What do you need in further training to be successful? And we talked about the things in reinforcing change. Again, you're focusing on driving that adoption, that utilization, and that proficiency. So the change management process to drive GIS success, it's really a linear approach. I'm going to walk through these. It's a model called ADKAR, ADKAR. And when you're trying to drive organizational change through individuals changing, the first thing you want to do is create awareness for A. It's the awareness of the need for change. And when you do that, you get people to go, I understand why. Why are we changing? Why now? What's it mean to the organization? What's it mean if we don't change now? More importantly, for awareness, what really hits home is, what's it mean to me as an individual? I get what it means to the organization now. Now connect that to me. So giving an awareness, and the earlier you can do that, the better. So once you have awareness, then it's about creating desire. I get why we're doing, right? Now desire is moving from I understand why to, yeah, I've decided to. I get what you're doing. I get what it means to me. I understand how this is going to impact the organization and me personally. I'm on board. Let's go. Knowledge then is, think about this as workforce development or training, and this is how to change. And so a big driver of desire is letting them know, we're going to ask you to learn something new. You might be going from pen and paper to field mobility, and you're going to use technology. Understand that can be a bit overwhelming, right? It can be a bit scary learning something new. We're going to give you the time to do it. We're going to give you the training to do it, right? That's a big driver of desire. It's like, okay, I get it. I get why we're doing it. You're going to give me the training. Yeah, I'm on board. And here with knowledge, I also like to say, and do I have your commitment to do this? And will you tell us what else you need, right? That again, getting them in the boat with you in the process. A stands for ability. And this is really, now they've had the knowledge, right? They're on board. They get it. They've been trained. They have the ability to implement this over time. And so they're able to say, you know what, I'm able to do this. I like it. Here you really want to ask again, talk about, what do you still need to be successful? What further training might you have, right? And this is where it really comes down to those frontline leaders coaching to the new skills. And understand they're probably not going to be very good at it at first. Nobody is, right? So knowing they have a ramp to get better and improve and being coached through the process. And then R, we talked about reinforcement, and that is simply what it is, reinforcing the new muscle memory over time. So you want to sustain change. So when you think about change, you're going to have resistance and you're going to have productivity gaps. You just are. It's human nature. So I want to give you a model here of what can happen when you have a strong change management strategy. What happens when you don't? So we've got 4 departments we're going to look at. So at the first communication or the first indication of change, Department D didn't do anything, right? No communication, no whatever. Let's consider it from map to pro. There is no communication whatsoever. You can see that productivity dipped. It never really came back over time because they didn't do anything. People were lost. They didn't understand. They may not even knew that it was pertaining to them, right? Department B then, or Department C, excuse me, they didn't really do much with communicating on change or driving change management. When they saw productivity dip, they said, okay, we've got to get this on board. We got to rail this in. They started to bring some change management communication training. Ultimately, Department B got back up to productivity at a higher level than they were before, but it took time. If you look at Department C, they started out with a pretty good plan on change management out of the gate. Productivity dipped a little bit, but then it came back quicker at a higher level. And mind you, you're going to see productivity dips normally when even the best laid out plan, because again, it's change. And at any indication of change, and even as you see Department A, people are going to go, okay, what's this mean to me? Is my job okay? Am I going to report to someone else? What's this mean? I'm not sure about this. But when you bring a good change management strategy along, communication, right, training, development, you get that productivity dip to be really small. People go, all right, I get it. This is great. Let's get on board. And then you get back to hopefully higher levels of productivity sooner as you go through your implementation. So, takeaway from this slide is you're going to probably see some dip in productivity. That's okay. But what you want to do is minimize that and bring people back to a higher level of productivity quicker. So sponsorship enables GIS adoption. We talked about the importance of that. And the number one obstacle to success for major projects is ineffective sponsorship. Almost 60% of projects that failed outright or fell far short of their targeted outcomes were because they didn't have that executive leader driving the message throughout the organization, nor did they have those frontline leaders involved in terms of sponsorship and development. So executive sponsors, when you're building that model, when you're looking for that ideal person, you want them to be actively visible and participate throughout the project, right? Understanding what you're doing, being able to communicate milestones and updates. You want them to help build a coalition of sponsorship with peers and managers across the organization. And then again, communicate directly with employees. And from executive sponsors, research shows that employees want to hear, how does this change impact the business? That's what they want to hear from executive sponsors. Now, on the other end, you've got those frontline leaders, managers or supervisors as sponsors. And for them, it's about being also a good communicator, right? Being a strong liaison across the organization, being an advocate for change, helping people come through resistance. They'll know their teams individually, and then being a good coach. So if you think about, we talked about the executive leaders, people want to hear business messages from them, but they want to hear from their frontline leaders is, okay, what's this mean to me? And how are you going to help me get through the process? One of the advantages I would tell you to do in terms of when you're building your change strategy is get your leaders through it first. Because remember, they're people. And when they hear the first indication of change, if you go back to that first slide, they're going to go, oh, wait a minute, what's this mean to me? What's this mean to my job? And the last thing you want to do is have an employee ask a leader, hey, what's going on with this? And the leader goes, yeah, I don't understand it either. So if you've got the bandwidth, get your leaders there first so they can really communicate, liaison, be that liaison, an advocate for what you're doing. They can help people through that might be resistant, and they can coach them as well. And so success really hinges on effective coaching supported with interpersonal skill development, right? So think about giving them the tools to help them communicate, motivate, coach, and reinforce new behaviors. So the what and the how. So think about this model for change management. We talked about the analysis and preparation of defining your strategy and your team, right? What are your different plans? How are you going to communicate? What's the sponsorship model you have? What's the coaching model? How are you going to help people through resistance, identify that and move them forward? Then training. At the end of the day, that should drive those ADKAR models for change: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So that is the what. Then the how is really helping your leaders be able to communicate and collaborate and help build that organizational agility where people are pretty agile to change and looking for it and overcoming organizational resistance, really helping them with different things along that emotional intelligence skill. So I think this is really critical at this point. It's not so much about just the what you're doing, and those are important, but you got to be able to connect that training and those messages and that resistance management to people in a way that really meshes with them. And sometimes leaders need help in that. And you want to look at doing these through your preparing for change, managing change, and reinforcing change. And that really becomes then a roadmap for increased ArcGIS adoption, utilization, proficiency. So a quick tale of two technology initiatives that I want to share with you that impacted me personally. And the first one wasn't very good, and the other one was far different. So when I was running a customer care center for a cable company in Memphis, I had been asked to go over and take over the role of VP of customer care. And we had just gone through a customer relationship management basically the billing system. Everything that held the customer's data that we worked with in terms of troubleshooting billing, we changed from one system to another, right? So I inherited that, and it was a disaster. It was an absolute train wreck. I mean, employees were mad. The system wasn't working right. People were quitting. It was the most toxic environment. And so, having been in the company, I understood that we were going through it. So I asked, some of the team members, I said, what happened? They said, well, here was our plan. We told them we were going from, billing system 1 to billing system 2. In essence, it was kind of going from speaking English to speaking Italian. Some things were similar, but it was different. It was hard. We said why that was important for the company to get to one system, and that we were going to have these really great financial reports to make decisions, and we were going to give them all the training in the world to do it, right? That was their communications plan. But it was a disaster. It did not work. And what really happened here was the organization leadership focused on the knowledge, train, 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 train. The problem was the employees did not have a connection to what was happening. So fast forward, get that mess cleaned up. 2 years later, I moved to Columbia, South Carolina, where I'm located now. My boss from Memphis brought me out there. And I get there, and lo and behold, we're getting ready to go through another billing system conversion. And I had to kind of chuckle. I went into my boss's office. I said, I thought you liked me. What are we doing here? The difference being we hadn't done it yet. So I got the leadership team together, and I said, okay, we're getting ready to go through this billing system conversion. What have we communicated? And they said, well, Chris, here's what we've done. We've told them that we want to go to one billing system as a company. We're going to have these really great financial reports, and here's all the training we're going to give them over 6 months. I said, all right, let's stop right there. I've seen this story. This doesn't end well. I said, let's get the employees together. So I'm going to be brief in what we did. And I did this in terms of small groups, and I was able to give the answers back in a group setting, brought all the customer service reps together and talked to them. So I said, I want to ask you 3 questions, right? And talk to them a little bit about the understanding where we were, and we covered all that. I said, at the end of the day, what is something that you really like about your job? I said, well, we really want to be able to take care of our customers, Chris. We want to know that they're satisfied when we hang up with them, okay? That we made an impact. I said, all right, fair enough. I said, what's one of the things that's getting in your way of doing that? They said, well, we're under a lot of time pressure to get off the phone, and we don't have a lot of tools, right? And I don't always feel that I can take really good care of them in terms of troubleshooting and billing, and we're just pressured for time. And I said, all right. And I said, if you could have anything else in your job, what would it be? What would be the outcome? And invariably, I knew the answer was, well, we'd love to make more money. I said, fair enough. So took that data, and again, I'm consolidating a lot of different things to one. And I went back and I talked to the group, and I said, while it's important that we do go to one billing system for the company, we have this financial data. What that means to you is different things that we can do that will help you doing this, 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 and this, and this. But I said, I asked you 3 questions. I want to give you the answer and give you some context. You said, at the end of the day, what do you want to do? And you said you want to take care of your customers. This new system is going to allow you to provide better service, right? We're going to have advanced troubleshooting abilities. We're going to have more robust statements. You're going to be able to provide a higher level of service with your customers. All right. So now I'm starting to see heads nod. People going, all right. 2, you said you're under a lot of time pressure. You don't have the tools. Well, guess what? As I just mentioned earlier, we got a ton of tools that this new technology will allow you to troubleshoot better than you ever have before. You're going to answer billing questions better. And you know what? It's a much easier to use system. You're probably going to get off the phone sooner, right? Your talk time might come down by about 2 minutes. So you're not taking more time needlessly, and your customers are being better taken care of. So now I'm getting some head nod. And at the end of the day, I said, what else did you say? Well, you wanted to make more money. Well, guess what? We got a whole new suite of sales tools. We're going to give you a bonus based on your customer satisfaction scores, which should increase by these. And with the extra 2 minutes you've got, now you can talk to them about different initiatives or like, HBO or Showtime or different things that could fit their lifestyle. We're going to give you a commission for it as well. Well, guess what happened? They couldn't wait to get into training. And that was one of the best business launches that we had in terms of CRM conversions, because we focused on creating the awareness for why it was important to the company. We talked about what was important to them. And then the training and the knowledge that we talked about was going to be important to drive that desire. They got what it meant to them, and they were on board, and they were really, really ready to go. So yeah, we focused on the entire AdCar model. We made sure that awareness and desire happen first. So that's the tale of two technology initiatives. So at the end of the day, it's about engaging the entire organization with GIS. So takeaways from today: effective communication to drive awareness and desire is critical. And the earlier you can do it, the better. And if you can bring your leaders through it first, that's even better, so they can be that advocates for you as well. Second thing is having that executive sponsor to really drive support and engagement for your efforts across the board. And they're always active and visible. They're building coalitions and they're communicating those business messages at a senior leader. The front line, you've got your managers being coaches, liaisons, advocates. They're overcoming resistance and they're communicating why it's important to the individual. And it really comes down to that interpersonal coaching, right? Change is hard for all of us. One of my favorite book titles is Change is Easy, You Go First. So it's about helping people through that process of resistance onto your successful organizational change effort. Thank you for letting me spend this 30 minutes with you. I hope you have some really good insights to take away in terms of how to really drive your geospatial strategy.